system, GoToWebinar system for the first time, that toolbar is unique to you, so you can click the orange arrow at the top of it, and it will remove it or minimize it on your screen so you have an unobstructed view of the presentation. Also, because of the number of individuals on the call, the default setting on the system is a muted setting. As a result, we do certainly welcome questions, welcome comments, but we ask that you use the questions tab that is on that toolbar. Those will go directly to me, and as time permits, at the end of the presentation, I will be moderating a Q&A with Mike. And if we run out of time and we don't get to your question, we will certainly follow up with you after the call. I also want to remind everyone that we are recording this session, and we will make a copy of the recording and presentation available on the SFPE website. On the home page, you'll see a Go Vote button banner up in the right-hand corner. If you click on that, it takes you to a governance page, and that's where you'll see the proposed Constitution and Bylaws revision document. You'll also see the FAQs there, and we'll post the recording and a link to the YouTube channel on SFPE site too, that you can go and download or share this presentation with others. So with that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Mike to get started.
Okay, thanks, Nicole, and thank you everybody for attending this session today and giving us a chance to go through our proposed bylaws revisions with you, or Constitution and bylaws revisions with you, and give you a little background on what got us here. Go ahead and hit the next slide, Nicole. Okay, as you know, you've received a invitation to vote on our proposed Constitution and bylaws. This is a rewrite of our existing Constitution. The whole impetus behind these changes are based on the strategic planning efforts that have been going on for the last year and a half that your board of directors has undertaken to revise our strategic plan, put the society in a position for growth in the future, taking advantage of new opportunities internationally, and just setting us up for success down the road. When we first started the strategic planning efforts, we were looking at our society being flat membership-wise. We were losing members and we were gaining members, but we weren't really increasing our membership. And we saw that as a need to look at what we needed to do to become to increase our membership and to serve more members, both in the U.S. and internationally. One of the things we did is, when we started to think about the future of SFPE, was to look at we obviously indicated there was a need to update and revise our strategic plan and really develop a strategic plan to move us forward in those efforts. And we started that process really before 2014, but in early 2014, we actually brought in some strategic planning consultants to the board of directors to help us in that effort. And through a whole series of facilitated meetings with the board and with our strategic planning consultants, we came up with a strategic plan that we've shared with a lot of you through webinars and discussions at our annual meeting last year as well. Now, one of the things that occurred during that strategic planning process is our consultants went out, did some environmental scans of our industry and the profession. We had those efforts involved interviews with past society leaders, fire protection students, members, board members, and even non-members working in the profession to see what SFPE was and meant to them and how we could better serve them, both the members and the non-member population. Go ahead to the next slide, Nicole. We took all of that in as part of the strategic planning sessions and looked at what that meant and what we need to do to serve those members better and to provide the services that they're looking for. Just a recognition of what they were looking for was important to us in that process. Opportunities and needs for the profession are global. We are certainly an international organization, and we need to put ourselves in the position of better serving our international members. We have an opportunity and a need to make further policy impacts and really elevate the visibility of the profession internationally, as well as domestically here in the U.S. and the other areas of the just really a global importance and visibility of the profession. SFPE is uniquely positioned to recruit future engineers into the profession. We do represent the profession and the practice internationally, and we have more and more people coming to us to support recruiting efforts, educational efforts, and so forth to continue to produce the fire protection engineers, the fire safety engineers, and so forth that we need. We also have the opportunity currently to strengthen the role and sustainability of SFPE chapters internationally. We have a need to, we also identified the need to align our governance and committee structure to better serve the global nature of the society and to meet these future goals and challenges. We talked a little bit about some of our challenges membership-wise. We have challenges too in regards to delivery of our educational programs and the platforms we use to deliver those educational programs, and we need to be able to change and to adapt to those types of technologies. So all of these things came into play when we talked about developing our strategic plan. And obviously the opportunity to and need to expand collaborations with other organizations, and at the same time recognizing that SFPE is out there. There are other associations and groups out there that are operating in our profession, and we need to recognize that and look at the expanding collaboration with those organizations. Next slide. Okay, so again, one of the things that came out, and one of the many things that came out of the strategic planning process was the need to make some changes to our Constitution and bylaws. Once we started looking at the changes we were going to be proposing to the membership, and those changes, as we'll talk later, changes in the makeup of the board of directors, term limits, our elections process, and so forth, many of these things came through some of these interviews and so forth that we did as part of the strategic planning process. There was a need to open up some of our elections and put the board in a better position to recognize the global reach of the society these days. And so anyway, we had a lot of those changes we identified, but at the same time, we decided since we're making some significant changes to the Constitution, we ought to take more of a holistic view of our governing documents, both the Constitution and then the separate bylaws document that we currently have. So we, at that point, we decided to bring in a parliamentarian consultant to help us update our governing documents to better reflect our strategic planning goals and objectives, and to address the changes we wanted to make in the organization of the board of directors and so forth. So what you see in front of you currently for voting on is essentially a revised Constitution based on the changes we made as part of the strategic planning process, and then the updating of our documents based on the parliamentarians' review and suggestions to bring our documents up to date, essentially. So as far as the society goes, we have a hierarchy of laws that we need to abide and operate under. And obviously, federal, state, and local laws are at the top of that hierarchy. You'll see our articles of incorporation. We are incorporated in the state of Massachusetts as a not-for-profit corporation. And then we have our Constitution. Our Constitution currently that we're operating under right now is we call our Constitution. We have a separate bylaws document that that includes some of the details, implementation, and lower level program requirements, and spells those out for the society. But it's a separate document from the current Constitution, and it's the Constitution that is voted upon by the membership. The bylaws are voted upon and approved by the board of directors. But essentially what we have in our Constitution currently is mostly bylaws by definition. And so what we are doing is we're calling the new document the Constitution and Bylaws for the society, although most of it is essentially consists of material from our previous Constitution document. And then you'll see there that rules of standing rules is the next level of documentation of our requirements and procedures, and that essentially will take the place of the bylaws that we currently have in place. So at these standing rules, where most of the current bylaws, the things like membership qualification requirements, how the qualifications board operates, details of chapter operations and chapter requirements, all of those things which are more procedural and program related would be in the standing rules, just like they are currently in our current bylaws. Okay, next slide, Nicole. So again, currently we have the Constitution document and the bylaws document. What we're proposing and what is in front of you now for voting is a single document called the Constitution and Bylaws. And the change and the approval of that document is up to the membership. And that document is the document that, again, is out for balloting currently to the membership. The standing rules are still under development by the board of directors. And again, the intent here is to carry over the material in the bylaws to the standing rules. And also you'll notice as we go through the detailed changes today in our Constitution, you'll see some items that we're actually taking from the Constitution and putting in the standing rules. And you can see as we go through the list of changes that those issues are not the primary establishing requirements for the society and the board and meetings and so forth. They're program level or details of how the society operates, how we interact with chapters, and those types of things. So we are moving those things because we don't think they need to be or should be in this higher level document called the Constitution and Bylaws. Okay, next slide. Okay, as far as the process has gone, we went out to ballot on April 16th as we included the proposed changes. Excuse me, there was a letter from me giving a little bit of background on the changes, and we included a frequently asked questions document as part of that. We also indicated that we would be providing this webinar to go through some additional information regarding those changes, and that's what we're doing here today. We reached out to chapter leadership and chapters. We've had, some of us have been able to speak at chapter meetings to talk a little bit more in detail about the proposed changes. We've had some teleconference with some of our past presidents to go through the changes and to address some of their concerns. I think Nicole mentioned earlier that we're going to be recording this webinar so that other members can take a look at the information presented here to help them in their review of the document and their voting. And then we'll continue to post any relevant documents or updating the frequently asked questions as we go through the process here. Under the current Constitution, the ballot period is open for a period of 60 days, and so that will end June 14th. Next slide, Nicole. Okay, I mentioned before that we had an outreach with some of the past presidents. We met with several of the past presidents back in Long Beach in October, talking about the strategic plan and some of the changes we were proposing to make. And then, like I said, last week and earlier this week, we had the teleconference with several members to discuss the specific changes in the Constitution and to address some of their concerns. Some of the past presidents have expressed some concerns in regards to what we're proposing here, and others have expressed their support of some of those of the changes we're trying to make and the issues we're addressing. So we certainly appreciate their experience and their opinions and thoughts in this process. Next slide, Nicole. Okay, some of the changes, some of the reasons behind some of the changes. Obviously, we've got some overlapping information between the current Constitution and the current bylaws documents that we want to address and to clean up. Some of the requirements are pretty prescriptive and have been resulting in more frequent updates and changes than we think is appropriate for our primary governance documents. We wanted to update and reflect more contemporary practices, such as electronic voting, greater member engagement and representation, and some of the global perspectives and needs of the chapters and of society members as a whole. The proposed revision is intended to accomplish the goal of creating a governing document, the Constitution and bylaws, that can stand the test of time and only be changed in exceptional cases. And again, it's not, we don't go about changing the Constitution very often, and that's why we decided to take that more holistic approach to reviewing the document as a whole, as opposed to just making some specific limited changes to the document at this point in time. Next slide. Okay, so let me walk you through the some of the specific changes we're talking about making. And again, when we talk about Article 1, I'm talking about Article 1 in the current Constitution. This is what is changing this is what has changed in the new document, the Constitution and bylaws. Article 1 is establishing the society in the name of the society. And the big change here is that our legal name is still the Society of Fire Protection Engineers, but we also wanted to indicate in here that we will commonly refer to the society as SFPE. We're doing that in some of our literature, our documentation. Certainly our new branding is based on SFPE, and we felt that was appropriate to be more inclusive of members who aren't necessarily call themselves fire protection engineers, fire safety engineers, fire engineers, and so forth. And so that's the reason behind this particular change. Although again, our legal name is still the Society of Fire Protection Engineers. Next slide. Okay, as far as organization goes, Section 2.1 is editorial changes and move to Article 1 of the new document. That's just indicating where we're incorporated, where when we were established and so forth. So that's the change to Section 2.1. Section 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, we're not making any changes there. Those are just some of the basic requirements on the society to operate, the use of society assets and incomes. The affairs of the society shall be directed by the officers and board of directors, etc. So those particular sections are not changing. And then Section 2.5, we had to change the date of our relevant IRS code that we operate underneath to the date of 1986. Next slide, Nicole. Okay, purpose, and again, similar to the use of SFPE to identify the society, we added the wording in here that for the purposes of this document and other SFPE documents, the terms fire protection engineering, fire safety engineering, and fire engineering are synonymous. Again, this was to be inclusive of, particularly internationally, the use of these other titles for the same type of practice that we here in the U.S. call fire protection engineering. No change again to Section 3.2. Okay, members. We did make a change in our membership categories. We changed to 4 grades of member. We have the professional member, we have member, we have the fellow membership category, and the student membership category. This change essentially merges the associate, affiliate, and allied members into one member category. So when you originally join SFPE, you will be considered a member of SFPE. If you want to go through the process of upgrading your membership to professional member, then you've got to go through the qualifications board process, just like we do now, to review qualifications for the professional member status. And then again, the fellow process doesn't change, and the student member process doesn't change. The Section 4.2 is one of those sections that we're proposing to move to the standing rules. And if you look at the current Constitution, that essentially is, excuse me, the definition of the qualifications board process. And if you're familiar with all the details in the bylaws, we have a whole section on the qualifications board process, the requirements and qualification requirements for these various member categories and so forth. So we felt that was more of a procedural issue that needed to be moved to the standing rules document. Section 4.3 is some just minor editorial changes. Section 4.4 was modified to only exclude the category of students from being voting members in the business of the society. And then 4.5 were editorial changes related to what it takes as far as a board of directors vote to remove somebody as a member of SFPE. So that's what that particular section change is. Next slide, please. Section 5.1, talking about addresses chapters. You'll see here we actually have several sections here that we're proposing to move over to the standard rules that are in the current Constitution. Section 5.1, the first few sentences will remain, but we took the last 4 sentences out, and they will be included in the standing rules. That has to do with the requirement that chapters submit their Constitution and bylaws documents to the society for review and keep those documents updated and so forth. Again, it's a chapter operations issue we felt was more appropriate for the standing rules document as opposed to the basic chartering document, our Constitution and bylaws. The Section 5.2 has to do with the requirement for chapter membership. Again, the issue of chapter members being members of the society and so forth. We felt that that was something that should be covered in the procedural requirements of the standing rules. Section 5.3, more editorial changes. Section 5.3 essentially addresses some of the geographical requirements of the chapters, conflict of the chapter documents with the society's documents and so forth. Section 5.4 has to do with the chapter board makeup. 5.5 was the ability to assess and collect chapter dues. 5.6 is chapter branches. Again, all of those things we felt were more chapter operations related and were better addressed in the standing rules document as opposed to the Constitution and bylaws. And Section 5.8, you'll also see addresses the Senate meeting issue, and we felt that again was better addressed in the operations, chapter operations, and chapter relations section of our standing rules. And 5.9 and 5.10 are editorial changes. Next slide. Yeah, Article 6 currently essentially gives the Board of Directors the authority to develop programs, establish programs that can be used to further the aims of the society and so forth. That has been actually relocated to 8.3 in the current in the proposed document. Next slide. Okay, here's where really some of the meat of the changes to the Constitution really occur, and those are in the sections addressing officers, the Board of Directors, and the elections process. First of all, it's been split into separate articles. Article 7.1, which currently addresses the officers of the society. We essentially eliminated the 5 vice president positions on the Board of Directors. We also clarified that the officers are the official spokespeople of the society. The vice president roles on the Board of Directors have been specifically tied to various program areas. In other words, we had a vice president in charge of our technical initiatives. We had a vice president in charge of membership. And over the years, particularly in the last 10 years or so, we've had that relationship between the vice presidents, the committees in those various program areas, and even the staff positions in those various program areas put us in the position of being too much in the weeds as far as the operations of the society and the operations of these various committees. The board in this strategic planning process recognized that we were too involved in the day-to-day operations of the society, including the functioning of the staff and the functioning of our committees. And so the decision was made to move the Board of Directors to a more strategic role, much more so than it has been, and to get the board out of the day-to-day operations of these programs. And that's the reason for the elimination of the vice president positions that are tied to those program areas. We also changed the wording as far as the number of directors by removing those 5 vice president positions, staying with 9 directors at large, up to 9 directors at large. And we also added the Chief Executive Officer, which is who our current Executive Director is, the ex officio non-voting member of the board. Part of the strategic planning process, looking at board operations and board effectiveness, it was realized that perhaps a 17-member board, as we have been for several years, is bigger than we need to be. And so at the same time we decided to eliminate the vice presidents and their program ties. We decided to reduce the board down to that 9, the number of 13, essentially 9 board members and 4 officer positions, not including the Chief Executive Officer of the society. Next slide, please. Okay, as far as Board of Directors terms and officer terms, we changed the officer terms to 1 year each and defined those terms as 1 year each. We didn't have any specific term limits before. We had certainly been operating along this in accordance with a 1 year officer term, and but at the same time we felt it was important, and one of the things we heard from some of the interviews and association practices was that we needed to define officer terms and Board of Directors terms, and we've done that here. The officer terms are 1 year each. The director terms are 3-year terms. Directors are limited to 2 consecutive terms as a director, not to exceed a total of 10 years total on the Board of Directors, so that a board member could come on, serve 2 3-year terms as a director, and then step through the 4 officer positions: the secretary-treasurer, the president-elect, the president, and then the past president, and that's what essentially is that 10-year limit for membership on the Board of Directors. We felt it was important to, number one, identify the term limits and identify and specify a maximum service on the board to allow for more people to come through the board, more people to participate in the board through regular changes of members on the board. You'll also notice with that 9-member board with 3-year terms, every 3 years we'll have an election for those board positions, 3 positions up for election, which we feel opens it up again for additional opportunities for involvement in the governance of SFPE. And then Section 7.4 of this particular article talks about, I believe, the executive committee and so forth of the Board of Directors. Yeah, the executive committee and the finance committee. So next slide, please. The proposed Constitution and bylaws talks about roles for each officer, how the classification or clarification on how a vacancy for the officer's position is filled. It gives the Board of Directors the authority to create the standing rules, formerly called the bylaws, and establish additional policies and procedures to implement those. Reduce the days to call for a board meeting to 14. Clarified a meeting quorum as a majority of those in office at the time on the Board of Directors. Allows meetings of the board to occur more quickly if all members are present, essentially waiving the notice of the meeting. Defines a passing vote to be a majority of the directors present and voting. We talked about the staggered terms for board turnover. And then the filling of a vacancy of a director can occur by board vote until the next scheduled election. And that doesn't actually count toward the term limits for that individual filling the open slot. Articles 8 of the current Constitution addresses administrative requirements, and these are all incorporated in earlier sections administration issues related to the board are included in the section on the board of directors and so forth. So those have been carried over to the current on the proposed document. Article 9, the awards section. We've edited this and referenced it earlier. The substance of the individual awards and the requirements for these individual awards will be in the standing rules like they are in the current bylaws. But we still have this establishing section that the board of directors may create an awards program, and that is included in the proposed constitutional document. Okay, meetings. Excuse me. I'm getting over a bad cold. I apologize if I'm a little choked up here occasionally. The meeting section was moved to Article 6. The Section 10.1 editorial changes, and essentially redefining our annual meeting as the annual business meeting to be set by the board. We changed the requirements to call for a special meeting of the society. We eliminated the executive committee ability to do that. The board of directors still has the ability to call for a special meeting. And at the same time, we changed from the current 50 members to 10% of the members in good standing to petition for a special meeting. Again, we felt this was appropriate to get to still provide a mechanism for establishing or to setting up a special meeting, but at the same time to reduce the chances of a spurious call for a meeting in that case. So that's why the change in number of members to initiate that special meeting. Section 10.3 was removed. It's the ability for the president to call for board meetings. That's authority is established elsewhere in our documents, particularly Robert's Rules of Order. Section 10.4 is editorial changes. 10.4 talks about Robert Rules of Order governing the meetings, both of the board of directors and the society business meetings. We also added the definition for a quorum of members in 5% members in good standing in order to transact business, so that we don't have a meeting called with very little representation of membership and creating changes or making changes in the society operations without having a more significant number of members involved in that decision. Obviously, one of the reasons we're polling electronically to our membership on these proposed Constitution and bylaws changes is because we don't get that many members at our annual business meeting in October or in this case, November of this year. So the electronic balloting certainly gives us the ability to reach out to more members and to get more member participation in the business matters of the society. Next slide, Nicole. And again, vacancies in office, we talked about those being addressed when we talked about individual officer positions and board positions in the new Constitution and bylaws. Next slide. The nominating committee process changed the article name for that, but the current sections 12.1, 12.1, there's no change there. That's essentially the establishment of the nominating committee. The membership of that nominating committee has not changed. We did section 12.2 talking about elections. We moved back the nominations and elections date from June 1 to July 1. We added the definition around the nominating committee's role in verifying applicants, publishing the list, and nominating at least one eligible candidate for each vacant positions. We also established the ability for other committees, subcommittees, et cetera, to be created by the board as needed. Next slide. Election procedure. This is another area where one of the more significant changes has occurred. Through the process, through our strategic planning process, we heard from members that our current process didn't afford the transparency and openness because members don't currently get to elect their leaders. You know, typically we've had a nominating committee that develops a slate. That slate is published. Members have the ability to, by petition, to get more members on the ballot. But typically, without any additional members on the ballot, the slate is declared to be elected unanimously, and there is no election for the board of directors. The concept here is that we will have an election every year, so that we will go out to the membership like we're doing for this ballot on the Constitution and bylaws to vote on the board of director, the open board of director and officer positions for the society. So that's one of the bigger changes here, to provide more openness to the process and an annual vote for the officers and board of directors. We also got input that this is really the way most member-based organizations are operating currently, and it was a good practice for us to move to when we talk about election of the board and election of our officers. Next slide. Okay, election procedure. A couple of sections here talking about addressing the old way of a letter ballot and collection of letter ballots and so forth. So those sections were removed because they're no longer necessary. We changed the section on petitioning the nominating committee to add additional names to the nominating committee slate to 5% of members in good standing. The current number is just 10 people can put folks on the ballot. Again, we felt it was appropriate to increase this number, and this number is actually a lot smaller than most other association membership associations have as part of their election procedures. We changed from October 1 to September 1 the date for nominations to be received to allow time for the elections. And again, we changed the reporting to membership date to December 1st. 13.5 was the election of the slate if no other nominations were made. And again, since we are going to ballot every year, that section is no longer needed. And again, 13.6 and 13.7. 13.7, no change. 13.6 is editorial changes. The other thing, too, is we added the note that the plurality vote shall elect. Paper or electronic balloting is allowed, including qualifications for nominations. So when the ballots go out to the members, there will be information provided by the nominees to give you a little bit more information on their background and their service to the society. The plurality vote issue addresses the idea if we have 3 open director positions that are being voted on, and we have 5 or 6 applicants that are named on the slate, that the top 3 vote getters would be elected to those positions. So that's the plurality vote shall elect clause. Next slide, please. Okay, the current balloting procedure in Article 14, the relevant issues based on electronic balloting and our new procedure contained in that previous section. So this section is no longer necessary and has been removed from the proposed document. Next slide. Okay, amendments to the Constitution and bylaws. And again, the Constitution and bylaws document that is being balloted right now, that is what the members vote on. This is what the members vote on as far as for amendments as well. So the amendment process, we increase the ability to bring forth an amendment from 10 members to 10% of the members in good standing. We also have the ability that the board of directors can bring an amendment can propose an amendment to the membership on board of directors action. Again, the members would still have to vote on that, but members still have the ability to bring forth amendments through this 10% petition process. The 15.2 is the section addressing the board of directors may authorize distribution of a ballot on proposed amendments as well. The Section 5.3 contains some editorial changes, and we also changed the voting period for amendments from 60 days to 30 days. And Section 15.4 is the adoption of the amendment. There's no change there. The adoption of the amendment, just like the adoption of this proposed new chapter society constitution and bylaws, requires at least a 2/3 vote of the votes cast. And 15.5 addresses the certification of the results and distribution of those results to the membership. So that's just some editorial changes there. Next slide. As part of this process, particularly because of the way we're changing the board size and the term limits of the board, we need some time to adjust the current terms of the board members. And there are provisos in the document that provide for continuity for the current board members during this process. Gives us extra time for the nominations and elections process for this year only. And then in the future, obviously those board positions will be filled by those 3-year terms on a rotating basis. This year there will be some adjustment we need to make in that if this Constitution and bylaws is passed, we will be going to the membership later on this year to vote on board positions, the 9 board positions on with terms set up. We'd have some positions for a 1-year term, some positions on a 2-year term, some positions on a 3-year term in order to set us up for that rotation of 3 board members every year. So these are what those provisos are intended to provide in the current document that's out for balloting. Next slide, Nicole. Okay, we've had, in talking to folks, both in chapters, the past president's discussions, and just questions that have come into headquarters and to members of the board, we've developed a document of frequently asked questions, which is posted on the SFPE website. There's links to it in the ballot package, and we will continue to update those frequently asked questions as necessary to incorporate all of the questions and responses that we're getting in regards to this proposed Constitution and bylaws. Please feel free to contact myself or any other member of the board of directors if you have questions. You can also contact Nicole Testa Boston at the Society headquarters. And again, as we after the next few minutes, as we finish up the discussion here, if you have questions, please use the question toolbar here on the webinar site, and we can get some more of those questions answered hopefully at the end of this session. Next slide. The question has come up as far as why wasn't there a comment period before the ballot. We've been addressing these issues and looking at these issues for almost 2 years now as part of the strategic planning process and the revision process that we've gone through. A lot of these changes are based on feedback we've gotten from members and others in the organization. We also have, the strategic plan. We've got some very ambitious goals and objectives set out for the next 3 years, and we wanted to get moving with those. And part of the framework for moving forward is to get these changes made in our Constitution and bylaws, and then further changes in the standing rules document. We completed our work earlier towards the end of March, earlier in April, and wanted to get this document out to the membership for voting as soon as possible. And that's, again, in the ballot package that went out to you on April 16th, is the document that we're proposing for adoption by the membership. This is an up or down vote for this document. We were advised in putting all of this together that this was a revision, essentially a complete revision to our current document, and that it was not appropriate it was not appropriate to do an up or down vote on individual sections of the document. So that's why it is an up or down vote on this on the Constitution and bylaws. I think I mentioned before, doing a mail ballot to the membership. An email ballot to the membership like we're doing now. The alternative would have been to vote for this at the annual meeting, but we get so few members at the meeting, we felt it was better to do the electronic balloting that we're involved in here. So that's the reason for the part of the reason for the process we're undergoing right now. Next slide. We've also been asked about why can't we see the standing rules. Well, the board frankly is still working on the standing rules. Again, the information that is in the current bylaws will be transitioning to the standing rules, where the board still has some work to do on looking at some changes and making changes to our committee structure and better setting ourselves up to work with some of our international chapters that are developing regional coordinating groups and regional chapter groups. So those changes are still in process, and rather than piecemealing a bunch of changes or showing you an incomplete change document as far as the standing rules go, we elected not to bring all the standing rules forward at this point in time. Also, just again, understand that the standing rules are voted upon by the board of directors. They're not voted upon by membership. So so if it's not really an incomplete package because of the fact that the membership votes on is responsible for voting on the Constitution and bylaws document, which is what you see in front of you. The material moving from the current Constitution to the standing rules, I think as we mentioned as we went through the individual sections, are really administrative details and procedures which are better addressed in the standing rules document. And that was the purpose for making those changes. Next slide. Again, the membership has the authority to vote on the Constitution and not the bylaws. That's by both the current That's our current Constitution and even the proposed Constitution. But that's, again, so the document that you see in front of you is the complete document that the membership has approval authority for. We are talking about, instead of having a separate Constitution and a separate bylaws document, the name has been changed to the Constitution and bylaws. There's actually only a couple of paragraphs in our proposed document that would be considered to be a constitutional document. The rest of that is a bylaws. So we're getting, we're bringing the name up to date in addition to the wording in the document. And then again, the standing rules would be most of what we have in our current bylaws document would become the standing rules. When we do get the standing rules finalized, we will be publishing those for the members to see. And again, the board can certainly be addressed, or any concerns or comments regarding those can be addressed to the board of directors. Next slide. Again, I mentioned this previously. It's an up or down vote for the current Constitution and bylaws balloting process. As we mentioned before, there's certainly opportunities for amending the document. But for this current process, the current ballot is out. It's either a yes vote or a no vote. There's no individual. There's no voting for individual changes in the document. Next slide. And again, there's certainly the current Constitution and the proposed Constitution and bylaws have identified the mechanism for making amendments to the Constitution and bylaws document, either through a membership petition or even for the board proposing amendments to the document. Next slide. I know there's been some discussion about the title of our current executive director position. The proposed Constitution and bylaws talks about changing that to a chief executive officer. And again, the concept here was that the board needed to become more strategically focused, and the day-to-day operations of the society is under the direction, currently under the direction, control, and authority of our executive director. We felt that doing some research on the way other professional societies and other not-for-profit associations are addressing the title of that position. The CEO came up as being used and being changed to in a lot of those associations, and we felt it was appropriate to do so here as well. Frankly, the changes are typically, a lot of these associations have what we call our SFPE President, which is my current position as President of the Board of Directors and President of the Society, is calling that position Chairman, and then have the Chief Staff Officer for the Society being the CEO. We didn't make the change to a Chairman. We're maintaining the President being the senior officer of the Society. But again, we felt that changing the name of the Executive Director to CEO was appropriate and more in line with the actual authority and responsibilities that the board has given her. So that's the reason for the change from Executive Director to the CEO. Next slide, Nicole. Yeah, and here's just a list of some other associations that have changed in how they label or title their chief administrative officer, chief executive officer. Understandably, there's some engineering associations that haven't made these changes yet and still use the executive director designation. But again, we felt it was appropriate for the way the board of directors has charged the executive director to run and manage the society. So that's why we made that change. Next slide. We also received some questions about how do these changes affect the chapter, how do these constitutional changes affect the chapters. The chapters have their own governing documents. They have their own constitution and bylaws. This does not impact those documents. This is strictly the changes to the society's governing documents. The chapter documents, there's no intent to make changes to those. And again, that process is identified in current bylaws and will be in the standing rules document, talking about the responsibility to submit chapter governing documents to the board for approval and revision and so forth. So that relationship hasn't changed, and nothing in here talking about term limits or boards or anything like that would apply to the boards of the chapters, the officers of the chapters in any way whatsoever. Next slide. I think we talked enough about the board terms and the board term limits. Again, the desire was to get on a more consistent rotation for open slots on the board, and also to provide an upper limit of how much time an individual can serve on the board, for the purpose of providing more opportunities for others to serve on your board of directors. So that's the reasoning behind the board term limits and the overall 10-year limit set on board membership. Next slide. The Secretary-Treasurer term is also set for 1 year. I know in the past a lot of Secretary-Treasurers have served multiple years just because of the responsibilities and the knowledge base for that particular position. Certainly under the current rules, the Secretary-Treasurer can serve more than one term and can be reelected for that term. But we didn't feel the need, based on all of the things we've put in place with financial oversight of the society, that we needed to maintain somebody in that Secretary-Treasurer position for a longer period of time. So that we decided not to make that Secretary-Treasurer, to address the Secretary-Treasurer term limit any differently than the other officers. Next slide, Nicole. So that is essentially the presentation. Nicole, if you've got some questions, we can certainly address any questions that have come up during the process here.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. One question that did come up: if you haven't received the ballot, how do you get access to participate? I did respond to that individual separately, but for others that may be in that same situation, the ballot was sent out electronically to anyone who we had an email address for, which was by and large the majority of our membership. Those that we did not, was 100 or so, we did send a postcard to, and we'll be resending as well. But the short answer to that is, if you haven't received the ballot, please contact myself or Julie Gordon, and we will confirm your member status and have Association Voting, which is the third-party software company that we're using to administer the ballot and have them send it to you. I know that some existing chapter officers are not members of SFPE National. How are the current changes dealing with requirements pertaining to chapter officers?
Yeah, at the present time, we haven't made any changes to that. Again, that will be, those provisions will be located within the standing rules document. There is currently a provision in the Constitution. Yeah, Section 5.4 talks about the president and a majority of the board holding member position in the society. We are proposing that that section be pulled out and put in the standing rules. And again, looking at our chapter operations and chapter relationships, and looking at addressing new opportunities for chapter organization or regional organization, we will be looking at proposed changes to the standing rules document involving chapters. Right now, this provision, there's no intent that I've heard anyway of changing this requirement, but it certainly could be changed as we move forward in looking at our whole chapter relations, chapter operations going down the road.
Thanks, Mike. There are two questions related to this membership, so I'll group them together regarding Section 4.1 and the existing membership grades, wanting to know if you could talk a little bit more about how those changes or what those changes will be and how that will affect how we currently operate. And specifically, by combining the lower levels of membership, it appears that we eliminate any minimum standards other than paying dues for the level of members. If that's correct, so that anyone, regardless of credentials, would be a voting member of the society. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's again, we've essentially established two tiers. Well, three tiers of membership. We have the fellow tier, but between not addressing the fellow tier, we have our member tier, and then we have our professional member tier. The professional member tier still requires submittal and review of qualifications that has to do with education and time in practice, and that still requires review by the qualifications board and nomination to that membership tier from the qualifications board. The member category, we've had associate members, allied professionals, and so forth, membership categories previously that essentially allowed interested folks who may not qualify for the professional member status but still could be a member of the society and a voting member of the society. We felt that we didn't really have some clear distinctions under those previous categories, and we felt that changing that to a single member category was appropriate. It still gives us the outreach to those folks and the opportunity for them to contribute and for us to get contributions from them, but at the same time still maintaining the qualifications-based membership grade of professional member and fellow.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Who is going to take on the program activities of the 5 board members that are being eliminated? Do we have staffing to do this, or do you anticipate adding more staff?
No, there's no plan to add additional staff right now. We have a very successful volunteer committee program. Our committees that operate in these program areas have been extremely effective over the years, and we have continued to have a lot of membership support and involvement in those committees, and that's really where the bulk of the work and the efforts get done. So working with the committees, working with their staff liaison, and working under the general direction of the strategic plan and direction of the board of directors, we don't see that there's going to be any significant change in that work getting done. Again, the important link there is the committees to the committee chairman to the staff liaison, and I don't see that change where we're delinking individuals on the board of directors directly to these program areas will impact the delivery of our programs to the members.
Thanks, Mike. If we really are changing this membership level substantially, don't you think future changes for the requirements for the various membership positions should be in the bylaws so that the board can't just make changes, but instead a vote of the membership would be required to change membership requirements?
Well, currently, all of the qualification requirements that the Qualifications Board utilizes to review for the professional member category, and also the minimal requirements for the other member positions are contained in our bylaws document, which again is under the purview and change authority of the board of directors. The Constitution establishes those member categories, but leaves the details of those qualifications and specifics of those qualifications to the current bylaws or to the proposed standing rules, as we've talked about. Your point that the board can change those without membership input, you know, it's certainly the board has the approval authority of the current bylaws. We certainly haven't had a need to change the qualification requirements for those positions. Recently or over the years, they've been pretty consistent. The Q board is constitutionally documented as needing to provide that review, so that's not under the board's purview. You know, the board serves at the pleasure of the membership, and if the board is doing something that the members don't like in regards to any of these areas, they can certainly make that known and exercise you know, their voting rights during our new annual balloting process for the board of directors.
Thanks, Mike. Could a completed draft copy of the standing rules be submitted to the past President's Advisory Committee by the Board of Directors for review and comment after it is complete but prior to finalization?
Yeah, I don't see why not. We could that we put together a draft that can be circulated to interested parties. There's, I don't see that as being a problem as we look at finalizing those documents. We certainly don't want to, you know, some of the, like I said, if we just carrying over what's in the current bylaws is one thing, but addressing some of the changes we need to look at for, as we talked about, chapter operations and committee structure and committee operations are things that will impact a lot of people. So I don't see that that would be a problem in providing some circulation before final approval by the board.
Thanks, Mike. And final question, I understand that we can make amendments in the future, but you seem to have made it much more difficult by requiring more members to amend the document. So it'll be much more difficult to amend once we pass this. Was that the intention?
Well, the intention was to, you know, reduce the potential for, I guess, abuse of the process. we wanted to make it so that an amendment that had, in order to bring an amendment to ballot to the 4,000 plus members of the society, we needed to have some significant support for that amendment. You know, certainly these days with the with email and electronic communications, we felt it was a lot easier to get more members involved in that type of process to ballot for an amendment. You know, certainly there's another mechanism, getting the board of directors to support an amendment. So in you know, looking at the current difference, before we only required 50 members, which is maybe 1.2% of the membership base in the society. We felt we needed to have a more significant number involved in that that decision, and the ability to require a vote of the membership for that type of an amendment. And in looking at other associations and other membership associations, some of the numbers were a lot more significant than what our number is. So we felt we were in good position with the number we proposed for that petitioning for an amendment.
Thanks, Mike. That was the last question. I did want to remind folks that we are recording this, and we will put a copy on the YouTube channel as well as on the SFPE website, excuse me, later today.
Well, again, I want to thank everybody for being on the webinar. I want to thank you for your continued support of the society. And again, if you do continue to have questions or comments related to the document that's in front of you for balloting, please let us know. My contact information was shown on the presentation. You can also link to my email address on the SFPE website and other members of the board of directors. So again, feel free to contact us, ask your questions, and again, as questions get asked, we can continue to populate the frequently asked questions document to incorporate those questions for others to see. So again, thank you very much for your attendance here today, and with that, Nicole, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. I was just showing on the website where how you can access the page, and like I said, shortly we'll be posting it so you can share it with others as you need to. And like I said earlier, if you have not received your ballot or have any difficulties, please reach out to us right away. We still have over a month of time for it, but we want to make sure everyone has it and has the opportunity to vote. So thanks again, and thanks, Mike. Have a great day.